right, Robert, we'll start with the Putin-Russia summit. I'm going to pull up a video just because I want your input as to whether or not you think Trump is doing what I think he's doing in this particular audio clip. It's only audio. They had their summit on Friday. I mean, it looks like it went well. We'll get into that in a second. And it looks like, as far as it goes, Zelensky has been utterly emasculated on an international scale. And I was actually just thinking that Zelensky basically understands it's going to end one way or another, and he can, either agree to it or it can happen without his consent. But listen to this audio clip of Trump answering a question, and you'll tell me if you think he's doing what I think he's doing in this clip.
Thank you for coming back to take questions. We saw that Russia continued its violence into Ukraine last night, launching even more drones. What did you make of that?
I think they're trying to negotiate. He's trying to set a stage. I mean, in his mind, that helps him make a better deal. It actually hurts him. But in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him, gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it later.
On the table for discussions today, Mr. President, are the territorial swaps on the table? Will you be discussing that?
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine.
Okay, so short clip. I mean, my theory, my idea is that I think everybody knows, I don't think Putin ever wanted to take all of Ukraine. I think this is Trump sort of setting it up so that when there's concessions, it's going to involve Zelensky giving or conceding some territory. What's your assessment of Trump's assessment? Is it does he believe it, or is this sort of setting the table for a concession, but that's going to be a win given how he's framing what Putin allegedly wanted?
Yeah, I don't know for sure what Trump thinks in that regard. I do think at a minimum, from a presentation perspective, using Europe's argument against them is an effective mechanism to sell the peace deal. Now, this deal has been on the table all along. Russia has made this particular deal available since June of 2024, and the Western countries just kept pretending they weren't offering any deal. They just stuck their head in the sand. They're like, golly gee, why won't they offer a deal? They keep telling you over and over again what their deal is. Made it in a speech in June of 2024. It's comparable to what was offered all the way back. For those that don't remember, this all sort of kicked off really 20 years ago when we decided to officially and formally use Ukraine as a proxy to undermine Russia. The goal being to break up Russia, destroy Russia, and the West be able to sort of pick its bones. And the goal was to use Ukraine to do it. And we did it first with a color revolution, an orange revolution there in 2004. You can read Stephen Cohen, the former Russian scholar who passed away some years ago. But talk about it in live time. George Soros, with his Soros Foundation's main focus was the government in the country of Ukraine. Main source of money laundering, a lot of human trafficking, bioweapons research. No surprise, the Biden family was neck deep in Ukrainian corruption. The governments went back and forth between the anti-Russian and pro-Russian parts of the Ukrainian society. Eastern Ukraine is historically Russian, ancestrally Russian, ethnically Russian, speaks the Russian language, and never wanted to be part of Ukraine as a separate government anyway, dating back to 1991. By contrast,
Hold up, Robert. Your audio, I think, needs to catch up. Okay, try it now.
Okay, yeah. How about now?
That's better.
By contrast, Western Ukraine is very anti-Russian, has been since since World War II, when many of its members signed up with the Nazis. The Stefan Bandera, that was later killed by the Soviet Union when he was being protected in Germany. So that wing is the most anti-Russian. That was reinvigorated in the 90s. Early 2000s, and they joined up into hooligan gangs backed by oligarchs, sponsored a coup in 2014. First one was 2004. The second one was 2014, where once again the pro-Russian side had won the elections, and they didn't like that, so they overthrew them with what's called the Maidan coup, where they staged sniper shootings, blamed it on the government. They, in fact, were the ones culpable. A range of investigative reporters have shown this over the years. Oliver Stone detailed it in his documentary films Ukraine on Fire, of which there are 2 separate ones. And so from that point forward, the Russian areas of Ukraine, seeing their government overthrown, rebelled and wanted to restore the government or be independent in like a federated kind of system, like a United States of Ukraine. They rebelled, in the Ukrainian army, the portions that were Russian turned on the Ukrainian coup governors. And it started in the Donbass in particular, but was also in Kharkiv, also in Odessa and other regions. And the Ukrainian government ruthlessly repressed it. And Odessa while people were inside protesting, they lit the building on fire and murdered them live for the people to watch. They let out some of the worst, most violent, vicious gangs to engage in all kinds of nasty behavior, rape, abuse, killing children. See, Melania Trump is writing letters. She should be writing them to Zelensky, not writing them to Putin. Zelensky and Ukrainian leaders are far more responsible for civilian death and children death than any place else. That reporter saying, what about Russia hitting? That's actually Ukraine that was bombing Russia that morning.
That was where I again, it's fog of war, literally. Marjorie Taylor Greene was commenting on how Zelensky was the one trying to sabotage the peace talks by drone striking Russia. I say, okay, fine. If it's tit for tat, that's war. But I don't know which one caused or which one was the response to the aggressor.
The Western media just pretends that Ukraine doesn't do anything like this, even though they're the ones doing it all along. They accuse Russia of doing the things Ukraine does. They pretend Ukraine does the things that Russia does. It is Russia that has gone to extraordinary lengths to limit civilian casualties in this conflict for a range of reasons, some strategic, some political. But there's really no disputing that from any objective analysis. By contrast, Ukraine often has targeted civilians deliberately for terroristic purposes, tried to once again sabotage the nuclear facility there in Ukraine that is under Russian control. On the eve of this, they have attacked civilian infrastructure that has only civilian purposes repeatedly and routinely in ways Russia has not returned the favor. Russia has the escalatory edge. They can escalate because they have nuclear weapons, amongst other weapons, in ways Ukraine cannot. This conflict was because they were going to continue the assault on the Donbass population that's Russian speaking, that wants to have Russian language in their schools and Russian language in the government offices, and is Russian by orientation, and had been repressed. And they started to launch a massive attack on them in February of 2022. The Ukrainian army was storming up on the gates of the remaining Donbass rebels, and that basically forced Putin's hand. Russia came in. They thought they could remind Ukraine of its military prowess, Russia's military prowess. Ukraine came to the table, and they had previously agreed to 2 different agreements to stop the violence against the people in Donbass related to the Maidan coup, supported by Senator Lindsey Graham and Senator John McCain and Victoria Nuland in the United States, along with George Soros as the principal patrons. And what they did is the first Maidan agreement said they all guaranteed security, including Russia guaranteed Ukraine security. And they were supposed to abide by respecting the rights of the Russian people and population in eastern Ukraine, known as the Donbass region, principally. Donetsk and forget how you pronounce the other one with an L, the Luhansk or something like that. I get it wrong all the time. But Ukraine refused to honor them. And then they did Minsk II, where they finally said, okay, now we're really going to honor these agreements. And they violated them again. So there was concern in Russia that Putin was going to sign up for Minsk III. He had no interest in that. It has been clear to the Russians for some time that they need a permanent peace that resolves what they call as root causes. The root causes being the militarization, Nazification of the Ukrainian government as a tool to wage war, a proxy war on Russia. They need Ukraine to not join NATO, for NATO to quit, for Ukraine to quit harassing the Russian population regions of Ukraine. And for them, that means the 4 regions that have voted, 4 of the regions where the Russian army is located in eastern Ukraine, that are historically Russian, ancestrally Russian, ethnically Russian, and speak Russian, and have long stated for forever that they've never wanted to be part of the Ukraine. They've always wanted to be part of Russia. For most of their history have been. They voted in elections held pursuant to the Kosovo legal precedent. And for those that don't know, when Yugoslavia was broken up, the Germans and the Europeans took the lead. They didn't care one iota about constitutional limits. Europe didn't care one iota about the respecting territorial borders. This sudden, we just care so deeply about borders and constitution. Utter hogwash.
Robert, I'm going to highlight someone who I know you love in his infinite stupidity, who's putting out his proposals for how this war could end. McFaul, it's impossible that he's actually this. He can only be stupid, because this is not something you could say if you wanted to even say something that's a lie or mislead people without embarrassing yourself. He says, here's how the war could end. Michael McFaul was the professor of political. He was. Here we go. U.S. ambassador.
Russia. That's how embarrassing.
During the Maidan revolution, the Maidan coup, he says, here's how the war could end. Day one, Ukraine agrees to use only peaceful means for unification. De facto, that's a giant concession to Putin. This literally makes no sense on its face. Day two, NATO allies vote to accept Ukraine as a member.
That guarantees the war continues.
But it
absolutely guarantees the war continues.
Robert, there's
no chance they will ever accept, Russia will ever accept Ukraine as a member of NATO. We have long stated we have no interest in it, the United States, but this has long been Europe's goal. Europe's goal has been to use Ukraine to break up Russia, no matter they're willing to fight the war to the last Ukrainian. And they don't have the weapons to do so, or Ukraine itself doesn't have the weapons to do the fight, doesn't have the manpower to do the fight, doesn't have the willpower to do the fight, doesn't have the money to do the fight. So they took on a fight they cannot win. And they want us to keep bailing them out in order to help Europe and hurt Russia, because it does not serve the interest of the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian population overwhelmingly, by almost a 50-point margin, favors immediate peaceful resolution and does not want to continue this war. Zelensky holds power illegally, unconstitutionally. His term ended a year ago. What people were worried about Biden doing, Zelensky literally did.
No, but Robert, it would be against the Constitution of Ukraine, I'm told, to hold elections now that they've declared martial law. And I'm like, what a great way to literally suspend a constitution, declare martial law and be a dictator for life, and then claim that you're respecting the Constitution by not holding elections. But, they can still have nightlife, and they can still have clubs, and they can still have social activities and whatnot. That's how serious the martial law is. Now, but the argument, Robert, is that the eastern provinces are going to vote Russian because all of that they did because all of the Ukrainians or Ukrainian loyals have left already. So it's sort of falsified.
There weren't hardly any Ukrainians there. So you can go all the way back. So these regions are 90 to 95% Russian, ancestrally, ethnically, linguistically, culturally, you name it. And when they used to vote in elections, they would vote 90% plus for the Russian side candidate that was more sympathetic with Russia. So the Crimea is like 98% Russian. The Donbass, 90%. Kherson and the other regions are more like 65 to 70%. And that's precisely the margins they won in choosing to be part of Russia. And what happened in Yugoslavia was we said that self-determination rules. This is what we said after World War I in the League of Nations. We said you have the right to determine your own national identity. Ukraine itself doesn't exist outside of this self-determination philosophy of the early 20th century. Well, we extended that after the end of the Cold War. And we said, if you want to break off from an existing government, particularly ones created by Soviet borders, which is like Ukraine, like Yugoslavia, like Czechoslovakia, like some of these other places, then you are legally entitled to do so. All you have to do is hold a plebiscite, a referendum. Russia objected to this at the time because they're like, okay, if you're opening the door to a whole lot of things, but it was the West, the United States and Europe, who insisted that you have a legal right to break off and form your own government, a legal right of secession. Well, each of the provinces where Russia is now in, the so-called territorial swap, is simply recognizing the Kosovo precedent. Each of these four regions has voted to join Russia. Crimea has voted to join Russia.
It's an amazing. Well, that you say it that way, where the argument is, well, it voted majoritarily only because all of the Ukrainians had been chased out. So you say if you get a decisive vote, you find a problem with it. When it's a borderline vote, you find a problem with it. And so the only way to not have a problem is to not do it. Like when Quebec voted to secede and they lost by like 1 or 2%. Well, then it was so close. Had it succeeded by 1 or 2%, people would have said, well, this is unfair because it's virtually half that don't want to. When it's a vast majority that do want to secede, they find another excuse to basically disqualify those results.
Exactly. And there's really been no dispute that the Donbass regions have been all Russian all along. The Russian police immediately, the local police, local government all shifted to being against the Maidan coup. So this all stems, and what is in the West, they have been miseducated. They've been lied to for years about the cause for the conflict, the reason why the conflict has progressed in the way that it has, what Russia's objectives are, what Ukraine's objectives are, what Europe's objectives are, what the U.S.'s objectives are. It has been to wage a proxy war on a nuclear-powered country in order to break it up so the globalist crowd can line their pockets with power and wealth into perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
Trump in 2015 and 2016 campaigned explicitly against this. Said, why don't we get along with Russia? Wouldn't we be better off if we get along with Russia? Wouldn't we be better off if we get along with Putin? Why are we in the regime change proxy war business? Isn't this counterproductive? Why are we still in NATO? An agreement that only made sense during the Cold War and makes no sense after the Cold War. And so but that's why they launched Russiagate, was to derail, not only to illegally spy on his campaign, to sabotage his campaign, to sabotage his presidency and saddle him with the Mueller investigation, but most importantly, to try to extort and blacklist any effort at a meaningful rapprochement with Russia. That the biggest critic of this sort of globalist order with real power anywhere in the world, other than Trump, is Vladimir Putin. And that Putin has been the reason why he is demonized in American media, and why most Americans have no understanding at all as to who he is and what Russia is about, is because he is such a dissident on the issues of globalist control. He believes in nationalism, believes in national sovereignty, believes that the various globalist priorities on social policy, on cultural policy, on economic policy are dangerous, believes in supporting domestic industry. It's basically the Donald Trump of Russia. And that's why he's deeply popular. His support he's not a dictator by any stretch. Zelensky is a classic definition of a dictator. Someone who holds power against the will of his people, outside of the constitutional term of his office, with the overwhelming 70% plus of the Ukrainian population wanting him out. Mm-hmm. That's who has who has locked up and suspended the opposing political party, locked up and suspended opposing religious movements, locked up and murdered opposing journalists, including American journalists. That's everything they accuse Putin of. Zelensky is guilty of in just the last 3 years. He is a high-profile, money-laundering, murderous criminal. So the question for Trump was, could he get out of this deep state conflict? The deep state loves this conflict because of how it saddles Russia. But a lot of people within the military hierarchy think it disserves us. It shows and exposes our weaknesses and vulnerabilities. That Russia has basically whipped NATO on the battlefield over and over and over again. That Trump has been lied to repeatedly about the casualty numbers. The casualty numbers are 10-1 on the Ukrainian side, not the Russian side. This is given away whenever there's needed to be an exchange of POWs or dead bodies. Ukraine can't come up with any. So Russia has them all, because that's how one-sided the battle of attrition has been. Mm-hmm. Russia is dominating on the battlefield. Many Russian leaders in Russia's position would not have sat down with Trump. They would have said, screw this. The U.S. is unreliable. We're going to go forward. We're going to take whatever we want to take, and then they'll sign whatever we tell them to sign. Putin has been a long-standing believer in the best version of Trump, thinks that Trump believes what's best interest of America, and that he's smart enough to know what is in that best interest and to act on it. So consequently, he's been constantly offering Trump an exit ramp from the Ukrainian conflict. And it's the same one he offered all the way back at the beginning, where it's just slightly adjusted. Initially, it was just going to be the 2 Donbass regions, and then the rest would be Ukrainian, and that would it. Ukraine signed the agreement. Then they went home, and Boris Johnson intervened from the UK and said, you can't sign this, or we're going to cut off all your aid. So an agreement they'd already signed to, they reneged on. This was the 3rd agreement they'd reneged on. They reneged on Minsk 1, they reneged on Minsk 2, and now they were reneging on Istanbul 1. And yet, despite that, Putin has consistently, since last year, said, look, it's just the provinces that voted to be part of Russia. As long as you recognize they're part of Russia, as long as you agree you will not join NATO and won't have this huge military, that's it. We don't need to go any further. Europe has pretended that Russia has this huge goal to go into, you take all of Ukraine, take all of Europe. What's useful for Trump is now he's got the same peace deal Putin has kept offering. Trump appears to be finally willing to take, recognizing that Lady Lindsey Graham has been lying to him. General Kellogg has been lying to him. General Kellogg's daughter has been lying to him. People connected to Swampy Susie have not been forthcoming and honest about what's happening in that conflict. The sanctions are only going to hurt us, not Russia. The going further in this conflict will only crush Ukraine, not salvage Ukraine. Right now, Trump can say, look, here's a peace deal on the table that Europe said their great risk was Putin going and taking non-Russian regions of Europe. That's now gone by this peace deal. This peace deal saves Ukraine, saves Odessa, saves Kiev, saves the rest of their soldiers, saves the rest of their people, gives them a meaningful peace path going forward, something the U.S. and Russia together are willing to guarantee their security from any future foreign invaders and attackers, be able to help stabilize their society. If Ukraine has any future at all, they would sign this deal. But Zelensky doesn't care about the Ukrainian people. He cares about lining his own pocket. And he knows that he can't stay in power if there's peace. Europe knows its ability to break up Russia disappears when there's peace. Mm-hmm. So their goal is to sabotage this. The media's goal is to sabotage this. The so-called experts and think tanks want to sabotage this. They will continue to go to great lengths to prevent President Trump from signing a peace deal he's promising.
Hold up. Your audio needs to catch up again, but they'll go to great lengths to prevent him from signing a peace deal. Robert, let me read a few of the chats over here because some of them are on point. From Rumble, from Tin Stacks, $100. Thank you very much. God bless America. What would be the implication of an open and free Russia-America trade deal? Thank you, Patriots. Sean says, yes, Zelensky is illegal, and Putin asked who has legal authority to sign a peace treaty. And that was from Sean 487, and Sean 487 had one on the intro. But I mean, look, another one just came in. Let's see what this one's on. King of Biltong, craving a snack that's bold, authentic, and packed with protein. Biltong boasts over 50% protein, packed with B12, creatine, iron, zinc, and more. Go to BiltongUSA.com. Code Barnes for 10% off. It's delicious. Get it. And the global chessboard continues to move. Do you think Trump can negotiate a deal before his term is up? I think he'll negotiate a deal. The only question is going to be whether or not Zelensky accepts it voluntarily or is left to his own devices to continue fighting in Russia without any support from the U.S. Because I could see Trump right now setting up the cards so that he says, look, this is the best it's going to get. We're not going to continue supporting Zelensky if he doesn't accept a deal that allows everyone to leave, save face, get what they need, and move on to peace. Then Trump just says, okay, we're done. And Zelensky, fight on your own, see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's what he has to do is to say, look, the U.S., Russia has agreed to offer very generous terms to Ukraine that preserves almost all of Ukraine's landmass, preserves all of Ukraine's population that actually wants to be in Ukraine, gets to stay in Ukraine. What's left of their army doesn't get devastated like it was about to get devastated in the next weeks and months in the Donbass region. It stabilizes peace and security in Europe, removes the risk of NATO from Russia's front door and ends that for good, and starts renegotiating a entrance of a START treaty of arms control, including AI and drone technologies, as well as intercontinental ballistic missiles and other weapons like that Russia has developed at a better pace than we have. And it would be good for peace to get some controls going back over again. Economic development, Russia keeping energy prices stable for the president, as well as rare earths that Russia has access to, and Arctic development that Russia has access to. The ways in which Russia gets along with everybody in the Middle East. Russia could be very helpful at getting a new nuclear monitoring peace deal with Israel and Iran. They may be able to help on the Gaza Strip related issues, on the Syria related issues that are percolating up in the Middle East. Be able to better negotiate with China without pushing Russia into a permanent wedding with China in terms of BRICS, convert BRICS into less of an adversary and even at times a potential ally on a global trading basis. So every reason in the world from a geopolitical sound logic says that Trump is doing precisely the right thing. That's why the deep state will go to great lengths to prevent it. Europe will go to great lengths to prevent it. Zelensky will go to great lengths to prevent it. And they are only relying on the mass lies that have been told the American people for the last several years. Like, finally, the British press is acknowledging, maybe Ukraine's actually losing the war. And you can see some of the reply like, what? I thought Ukraine was dominating. I thought Russia had 10-1 casualty losses. Those are all lies. And hopefully President Trump realized if he doesn't get out of this, he'll get blamed for this.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine is going to collapse. Ukraine is going to lose. That is inevitable. The question at this point is, does Trump get blamed for this and saddle his presidency with a failed promise, or does he deliver on that promise and deliver a peace agreement that's as significant and consequential as any peace agreement in the last century? So hopefully Trump will stick to his campaign promises and deliver what MAGA wants. If he does, he gives Ukraine a simple option. You either accept the deal, in which there's something left for you, or you don't, in which there's nothing left for you. And Zelensky, if you don't sign the deal, we can still criminally prosecute you for all of the fraud and crimes you've been engaged in with your buddies and pals for 5 years. Maybe you should sign the deal. If you don't sign the deal, you and your buddies can be looking at criminal prosecution and extradition. Europe's in no position to negotiate anything. They are a complete failure of a continent at this point. The quicker we divorce from them, the better. And I think that's what Trump has started to recognize. So the peace element won out. Got the summit done. Contrary to what a bunch of people said, it was not a trap. Trump was not going to arrest Putin when he showed up. There was going to be no assassination attempt. This was a sincere effort by two men who are actually popular, unlike Starmer, who is hated in the UK, unlike Macron, who is hated in France, unlike Merz, who is hated in Germany, unlike Zelensky, who is hated in Ukraine. The only leader in this whole affair that's popular are Viktor Orban, who has said Russia is one time to get out, the president of Hungary, President Putin, who's the most popular leader in the entire world, not named the president of El Salvador, and then President Trump. They're the only ones that have above 40% approval rating at home. All the others are in the 20s. So hopefully President Trump doesn't let them sidetrack him again, doesn't let them drag him into this constant European war, and does what he was always intending to do for over a decade: peace and rapprochement with Russia, peace and to end of the war in Ukraine, no more dependence on the EU and Europe, an independent nation looking to be independent globally for our own economic prosperity and security.